obviously very jealous of Christy right now, but unfortunately for you guys, it's just going to be me tonight. So I really apologise for that one. So I'm going to read out a few of your comments. For any of you who haven't done Pour and Sip before, and this is your first live tasting, welcome, welcome, welcome. How it works is we're going to try two amazing whiskies tonight. We're going to start with Glenfarclas, the 105, and then we're going to finish with the Talisker. So yes, get your glasses ready in that specific order, please. And we're definitely going to be starting with something pretty strong tonight at 60% ABV with the Glenfarclas. So be warned for that. Have your water ready for that one. Let us know. Let me know what you guys have been drinking. What's the best thing you've drunk this week or at the weekend? Have you had anything that's been amazing? Anything that's blown your mind that you want to let the Pour and Sip community know? Just going to read out a few of your comments because already loads of you are commenting. Reverend Kevin Wright, evening all. Steve Coleman Williams with Francis, my daughter, his wife, and Chris, my wife, are all in the same room this evening. Wow. So no Netflix for you guys in the same room. You're all tuning into Pour and Sip. Really, really big that up. Mike Pizarro, looking forward to this. Generally a fan of Talisker. Excellent. Real Bunga, great name. Good evening. Joe F, same. Mike Kingswood, Pizarro, though Glenfarclas has surprised me in the past. Steve Coleman Williams saying it's held the rank of favourite for him for a number of years. It's always in the decanter at the ready. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Glenfarclas, and we're going to talk a lot more about Glenfarclas in the next half an hour. Reverend Kevin Wright, I've not had Talisker for a while. Looking forward to it. Joe F, this 10-year-old is always on my shelf. Reverend Kevin Wright, we must pursue a South Branch meeting. Chris Dagnan, yes, it's Southwest Branch for anyone who wants to organise another Pour and Sip meet up in a more convenient area for you guys. DS007, evening from Chard, Somerset. Reverend Kevin Wright, it sounds as if we have a quorum for Bath. I don't know what that word means, but I assume you're all living in the Southwest. Chris Turner, evening all. Ian Jambo Rain, got a couple of absentees this week. Mike Sutcliffe is in Ecuador. Blimey. What is Mike Sutcliffe doing in Ecuador? That sounds really awesome. And Graham Lloyd Jones on call, sadly. So great to see some of you Pour and Sip regulars here. You all know the drill. So once again, if you haven't done Pour and Sip before, please get involved in the comments. Please let us know your tasting notes. Please let us know what you're thinking about the whiskies, and let us ask any question you want to. There's no question that is too silly. Wherever you are on your whiskey journey, please just try and get involved. Everyone is super friendly here, and I will try and read out as many of your comments and many of your tasting notes as possible. Steve Hickson saying he's been on the Pike Creek after the last tasting, and he's bought a bottle after the last tasting. So well done on that. I thought it was an amazing whiskey. Pete Gilmore had the Pike Creek whiskey from Canada. I love it. So obviously that one has made a really good impression on us Pour and Sippers. It made a good impression on me. Well, loads of you here. Chris Dagnan, Green Spot, wonderful Irish whiskey. Lovely stuff. Alistair Heil just tuned in to say hello. You're not staying, Alistair. Just saying hello. Well, hello, Alistair. Goodbye. We'll see you soon another time. Joe just got back from a week in Edinburgh, laden down with 9 bottles. Got a little carried away. Must not buy any more bottles for the time being. Reads, tried a Ben Romack 15-year-old this weekend. Outstanding. Mike Pizarro, my go-to recently has been the Compass Box Hedonism. I love the Compass Box Hedonism. It's one of my absolute go-to whiskies and one that I always recommend to everybody. Joe, if I did purchase the standard Smokehead and also a boutique Tennessee rye that I had at Milroy's during our Pour and Sip meet. Sounds wonderful. Your Uncle Vanya, I'm a bit late. Where is Andy's better Pour and Sip half? Exactly. If you didn't know, Chrissy is currently in Islay, so she's not going to be joining us tonight. You are unfortunately stuck with me. Ian Jambo Rain revisited the Tamdhu batch strength from December box. Fantastic. Loads of you got some great recommendations here. Mike Pizarro also had a Talisker tasting box from a friend, which was very good. Alistair Taff, tried mine all already as I'm away, put an order in for the first 3 from 2 weeks ago. And Pike Creek has already become a firm favourite for me. Got 2 bottles. And at that price point, I do not blame you. Remember, you all get the discount in the Pour and Sip store for any of the bottles that you try on our monthly subscription. So if you really like any of the drinks tonight or the bottles tonight, please make sure you head to the store. Sarah Albany Parker, hello from County Durham. Hello from London, Sarah. Lovely to see you here. TACD, evening all. Yozza Hughes, evening all from Stinky Midlands. Lol. Yeah, it doesn't smell. Sorry, Yozza. Green Tea is green. Good evening all. TACD, I have been very tempted by the Pike Creek as well. Wow, it sounds like Pike Creek has really, really kind of got your palates going. Anthony Mullins, yes, the bottle of Pike Creek I bought last time is half gone. Well done. Chris Dagnan, Pike Creek's almost gone and now on a second bottle of Brenner. Wow, you guys really, really like that Pike Creek. We'll have to get another Pike Creek. Green tea is green. The Lakes has been my tipple of choice of late. Yes, amazing stuff. And congratulations to the Lake. They won at the World Whiskey Awards. They won gold. Mike Pizarro missed the last session. Sounds like the Pike Creek might attack my wallet. TACD, my favourite still is the Teeling. Really trying to make that last until I can organise a tasting session with a friend. Lovely stuff. What an introduction. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Peter, who's from Glenfarclas. So please get your Glenfarclas, I'm struggling to say that over the course of the night, get those ready and welcome Peter. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm very well, and thank you for the invitation this evening. It's wonderful to be back doing this again. And
Yes.
as we were chatting about earlier, I completed my 200th Zoom tasting, since lockdown a couple of weeks ago. So it does make you look at things in a very different way. So thank you.
It really does. It's kind of a positive. It's been a positive, and there's been negatives because obviously it's not the same as being in the same room as each other. But it has been an amazing way for the whiskey industry to kind of continue and to still get in touch with its client, with its customers, and everybody still talk about whiskey over the course of lockdown. And I think even now we're coming out of it, you're seeing it's still sticking around. So it's it's good to be mixing the two now rather than during lockdown where it was just like Zoom meeting, Zoom tasting, Zoom tasting. So I can see after 200, maybe you got itchy feet.
It's kind of quite strange. It's one of those things, and it's just as you say. There's nothing like being in a pub or a restaurant and sharing a dram with friends and family, which is wonderful. But this just adds another tool into the toolbox for us. As far as we are a small business, we're a small team, so we do have a lot of activity planned on Zoom or Teams or whatever it may be through the winter as well. So we're encouraging people to get out through the summer. Enjoy it, enjoy a dram in the pub. But that Friday night, if it's cold and damp outside, particularly in Scotland, we will be there through kind of the worst of the weather to bring Glenfarclas into your living room, dining room with your friends at home. So, it's a great way to do it.
That's what we've got in our glass this night. Chris Agnes just saying they do have the interweb in Isla. I am aware of that, but I think Christy's on her way home as we currently speak. She will be on the plane at the moment. So, even with Wi-Fi, I think that's going to be difficult. Right. So, Peter, talk to us a bit about yourself and how you got into your current role.
So, I've been working. I actually work for Paul Ruighe Portfolio. I mean, we are actually the UK distributor for Glenfarclas. Paul Ruighe took it on board 16 years ago, and that's when I joined. Previously, I was working with Ian MacLeod Distillers, and that's when I came across Glenfarclas for the first time. So it's almost 20 years that I've actually been working with the brand. So it feels like a lifetime, but it's a great brand to work with. Still family owned. It's fifth generation. Mr. Grant's the chairman. So again, they're great people to work with, and they've got a wonderful selection of whiskey. That's the key thing.
Absolutely, they do. I mean, Glenfarclas is kind of one of the last remaining properly independent, family-owned and managed distilleries. It's kind of a very rich history. Talk to us about those origins of Glenfarclas.
I mean, that's exactly it. It's way way back. They don't really know when Glenfarclas was founded, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, really?
It's like a lot of distilleries. It was illicit stills for so many years. I mean, it was set up as a farm. Back in. Legally, it was 1836, and then the Grant family bought it over in 1865. So they actually celebrated 185 years last year of legal distillation. And again, just being Glenfarclas, we had a bit of fun, and we did produce a limited edition bottle. And the tube itself is actually, being family owned, they're really quite frugal as well. And the whole idea behind the label is these are all the different labels over the decades from other bottlings. It's
wow, cool.
We went to an agency and said, "Can you come up with a pitch for us for a bottling?" We did the same for 175 10 years previously, and they were asking thousands. And some of the distillery went to a big cupboard up there, and threw the labels up in the air that landed on the desk, and they took a photograph. And this is how basically the tube was actually created. It sounds mad, but the people, actually love that simplicity of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that actually strikes me about Glenfarclas as well. It's when we're talking about those origins of being traditional, family-run, independent. You you kind of look at it and you look at those labels, and there's nothing particularly super fancy about it. It's very simple. Everything's got those age statements on them, and it's like kind of a throwback. But how do you? I mean, at the distillery, is it all still, you know, loads of family? Is it very team orientated?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Grant still lives on site. You know, this is the thing, and the whole idea is if you work in production, generally speaking, if you're a stillman, a mashman, distillery manager, you're actually offered a house to actually live on site. You know, so it is a real community spirit. I mean, the last count, I think there's only something like 32, 33 people employed in the whole business for a global. Where you think as part of it's absolutely crazy, but they do have. I think they're exporting to about 115 countries worldwide now. But it is a family-owned, family-run. I mean, we like to say it's probably the last of the properly family-owned, family-run distilleries. You know, we are talking they're actually there every single day. They're totally hands-on. They don't have outside help to actually do it. And in real terms, what you've got to understand as well, there's approximately only about 5 or 6 shareholders in the whole business.
Yeah.
And it is a privately owned company. You can't Google company's house.
Okay.
Find out about Glenfarclas. It just doesn't exist. So that's kind of really odd thing. But from that point, it gives them carte blanche to make whiskey exactly where they want to make whiskey. So it's not like one of the multinationals where, oh, wait a minute, the share price has fallen. We need to go and change this or change that.
Sure.
It's just the point you said. I mean, in the UK, it is all age statement whiskies that's actually produced.
Except for this.
You know, except this at the moment. But
that's kind of what's unique. But like also, like, I mean, the other thing that stands out about Glenfarclas, apart from that being this kind of small, you know, family-run business, is cask selection. So it's a real kind of tie towards sherry with Glenfarclas. Where's that stem from? How does it affect the Glenfarclas character? Why is that still such a huge thing? Will it always be?
Yeah, I mean, people always ask us, what is the character? What are the mainstays of Glenfarclas? Really, the traditional methods. You know, the cask being one. Obviously, we spend a lot of money on the casks. So we've been buying from a bodega in a place called Huelva, which is about 45 minutes from Seville, since the early 80s. I'm not sure if it's 83, 84. So we're buying 2 different sizes of casks. So we're buying Oloroso. This is really what we've decided is the right cask for Glenfarclas. And it's either a butt or, you know, a hogshead. So you're talking 500 litres or 250 litres. It's just the size that we prefer to use at Glenfarclas. But don't get me wrong, there is sometimes you end up with a kind of sneaky one when we're buying maybe 1,000 casks at a time, and all the casks are delivered built up. They're not flat pack like some of the bourbon barrels you get from the States.
Sure.
But there'll be an odd one in there, and this is like the crown jewels for me when you're actually trying to sell something different. So you will see some limited edition stuff over the years. We've done cognac, we've done other pheno casks, for instance, rum casks, different things like that. But that is an oddity.
Because when we're talking about the core range here, we are always talking about sherry.
The core range in the UK really starts at 10 years old. We've got 10, 12, 15. We did have 21 up to just last year. And there was just the sales in 21 went absolutely berserk.
I think it's that thing as well of like, I know coming into whiskey, Glenfarclas is the one I think that if you want to get into single malt, it gives you such an opportunity because it's selling those at very reasonable price points and seeing them 10, 12, 15. I mean, I actually had the 17 as well here, and then even 18, 21, 25, and all at reasonable prices. I mean, £100 it usually is for the 21, something like that. For a 21-year-old is pretty absurd, really, for such a whiskey of that quality.
It is going back to the whole family thing again. I mean, because this is as straightforward as that, where you know, the Grant family look at it and say, well, it is a drink for everyone's pocket.
Yeah.
First and foremost, or an occasion, or an anniversary, or is it Christmas time? Let's just maybe trade up a bit. Or dare I say it, through COVID, pandemic has been absolutely bonkers. People are actually, you know, they're not having the 3-4 holidays a year. They've done the house, they've done the garden in the first lockdown. We've seen unprecedented sales last year. This year we thought we'll slow down. This year is already overtaken last year for sales. But people are sitting at home, they're drinking, and they're drinking better.
That's exactly it. And I think Glenfarclas is one of those. It's just such a good point of reference as well for single malt and age statements. But I mean, that's another thing. And then, but I wanted to also talk about like the Glenfarclas house characters. So we've spoken about sherry, and it's about maintaining as well those traditional production processes. And there's things like, for example, the kinds of the direct fire under the stills. You know, this is one of the only distilleries that exclusively uses this. How does that affect the character? What does that entail?
I mean, what actually happened with that, it goes back to really the 1980s when the price of coal through the national coal strikes rocketed. And at that time, most of the distilleries in Scotland were actually coal-fired. So the idea would be, let's change it on to, steam coils, like probably almost 99% of the distilleries now are all steam coils. So for people who don't know what a steam coil is, if you were to cut open and do a flip on it, it's like looking inside a big kettle. It's the same idea as an old kettle. That's basically what a steam coil is. What Glenfarclas do is they've actually got gas burners underneath the stills, the copper stills. I mean, I heard a crazy one recently in Callum, distillery manager. I think he was saying they're burning almost £80,000 a month in gas. That's what the gas bill is at Glenfarclas.
It's going to get worse and worse with those prices.
And it's absolutely bizarre. Excuse me. But that is the whole traditional. So with that, we did actually try the steam coil way back in the 80s, and it was sent away for analysis. And when it came back, they just said, we don't know what it is, that liquid, but it's not Glenfarclas. The steam coils were ripped out, back to direct fire. So it would basically lose the character. It gives it an oiliness, a freshness, a greenness, actually, in the new make spirit situation. Yeah. That is the key thing. That's the heart of Glenfarclas, is that raw spirit.
Yeah, I get that kind of. I always get from getting Glenfarclas. It's kind of like a really strong toffee note as well. But I wonder if it's coming from that particular use of the direct fire as well.
I mean, if you look at stuff, if you taste some of the older family casks range, for instance, if you go back,
let's look at my 1987 one.
I mean, you go back to some of the stuff from the 70s, and it was kind of coal fired then.
Okay.
You got that smoky element coming through, because Glenfarclas really it is classed as a non-peated whiskey. The classic, the style now. I mean, it's between 1 and 3 parts per million. That is the big difference. So when you taste it compared to something like, Islay, I mean, it's miles apart. But there's so many people doing peated whiskies now anyway. That in Speyside. But going back to what makes Glenfarclas that bit different, that bit special, definitely the direct fires. That is a huge part of it. Second thing, traditional warehousing, old Dunnish warehousing, where we don't do 100 casks high wrapped in cling film or any of that kind of metal tins. I mean, we're talking some of these sheds would be cattle sheds before they were distilleries. So distillery warehouses. So you're talking things that are 200 years old plus.
Oh, right. Wow, incredible.
And if you go back 200 years when it was proper cold weather, not what we get now, the walls are 3 feet thick. They've got slate in the roof, and it was earth floors, and that was the insulation. But even if you go to warehouse number 1 at Glenfarclas, it's still exactly the same this day. I was up a few weeks ago, and it was a beautiful day, and it was like 18 degrees outside, but it was 5 degrees inside the warehouse. So you've got that continuity, but that's the same if it's minus 25 outside. So that, again, it's great for making old whiskey, and because we get asked that a lot. Why is Glenfarclas get such old stock? Because of because of the warehousing, because of the quality of the casks, and also we don't really change anything. You've got to maintain that level of temperature for the age going forward.
That's super impressive, and I think that's what people get when they think about Glenfarclas. It's all these kind of things, traditional methods, family-run business, and then sherry casks on top of that as well. And then, as you were explaining with the direct fires, is the only distillery still to be using it exclusively?
No, this came up a few weeks ago in a tasting, and someone did much more educated than me, and it was a proper whiskey person in the crowd, and he said there was actually 3 still actually using it. but
Okay.
2 were only part-time. He wouldn't share with me who they were, but I found it quite funny, and I'm not geeky enough to go and look that up, but
If any of you guys at Pour and Sip are, because some of you guys want to be,
please do, and please share it with me. This is
the
it.
ones that use direct fire, and are any of them exclusively using it throughout the production process?
Because we did away with malting floors. I think it was 72, 73. As we doubled, we went from 2 stills to 4 stills to 6 stills, and at that point we'd done away with the malting, and I think it was 72. And it was 72 because we opened the visitor centre back in 73. And I think we were the second distillery to do that. So they were actually looking even back then, not so much to encourage tourism, but it was people were coming to the distillery and saying, look, it can be see around. And even to this day, Mr. Grant's a bit puzzled. He's like, it's a production facility that people want to come and visit. He says, it's like, what do you do? Oh, I work for a building company. Can I come and have a look around your building? It's one of those things. I just find it fascinating. But
it is. It absolutely is. I want to just get to a few comments because there are tons and tons and tons of comments, and then we can start talking about this particular dram. Joe has managed to grab an Ardbeg Ardcore today. Can't wait for that to arrive. Oh wow, I would love to try that, Joe. If I'm massive on the committee releases, and I kind of dropped the ball a bit on this one. Right, so going to this one, Steve Coleman Williams, bit of a weird taste note at first, then tobacco, crushed pepper, and tomato on the nose. In Jambo Rain, this Glenfarclas smells fantastic. Massive sherry hit. Joe F, lovely sherry notes on the nose with red berries and light honey, a very sweet smell. TACD, lovely, rich, oaky nose, maybe a hint of red wine. Joe F, it has a lovely creamy vanilla background. Anthony Mullins, smells lovely. I'm getting vanilla fudge. That's a note I often get in Glenfarclas all together. I detect orange and wood on the nose. Citrus oil. Reverend Kevin Wright, I'm getting an old woody nose, like walking into a slightly musty National Trust property. That is very niche, with some burnt cinnamon orangey overtone. Sorry, 1 second. Pesho, vanilla fudge and sherry. Joe F, definite orange notes, also marmalade. Mikhail Baghammer, love your surname. Good evening all, sorry I'm late. Lateness will not be accepted, and next time, unfortunately, will be detention for you. Yoza Hughes, lots of oak on the nose with familiar sherry notes with vanilla. Malcolm Tucker, the initial hit on the nose was sherry fruit from a trifle, now getting vanilla custard and leather. Pesho, it doesn't drink like a 60%. We will come back to all of this. Just want to read out a couple of taste notes. Ian Jambo Rain, welcome back. DS007, nice golden colour, getting the oaky notes and sweet fruits. Wow, Joe F says, the first sip is a strong one. That hit of sherried fruit that slowly flows into orange and cream vanilla with an edge of citrus. It ends so smoothly. Reed asking, is this one natural colour? We will discuss. So let's use that note as well to just discuss the dram itself. So it's kind of interesting, this one, because kind of at that time in the 60s where, like maybe like Glenlivet was starting promoting, single malt as an option over blended whiskey. It's kind of the close of the 60s that Glenfarclas kind of released this, and this non-age statement whiskey cask strength.
Yeah, it was, again, all great things and great products. It was done by accident. This was done, this kind of came to light in Christmas time, 1968. And I've heard various different varieties of this story for different family members and different parts of the team, but it all seems to be the same thing. It was like the family at the time, it would be the current chairman's father, George Grant. So he went to send out some Christmas gifts. This is how this was created. And there wasn't any room in the warehouse. So they'd actually overfilled the strength on it. So so this must, probably at the time, it'd be filled at about 70%. 71%. The filling strength on this normally is kind of 68.5, brought down to about 60. Filling strength, receiver strength, 63%. But what they actually done, they tasted this. They tasted a cask, and then they tasted another cask together, put them together, and they brought it down to 60%. And they needed 200 bottles, and this is where the story comes from. And they sent them all out, and honestly, it was literally this kind of style of bottle with a sticky label on it, and they had handwritten Glenfarclas 105, and that was it. And the Glenfarclas script, the way it's actually written, that was Mr. Grant's handwriting. That's the way he actually signed Glenfarclas, because people think it's very, very smart, isn't it? But And that's how Glenfarclas 105 was born. And you actually look back, it was the first commercially available cask strength whiskey on the market. Out of the blue, in the good old days when people thanked you with proper letters or cards, all these things come back and they're saying, where can we buy this? Never mind anything else. And I think there was 100 cases was done first, and then so on and so on. But it's the wonderful thing about 105. There's so many people worldwide, different countries will struggle to say Glenfarclas, even in the UK, but they can all see 105. They can all see that.
Yeah, I love that label. It's an attractive label.
So much so, it's the biggest. So you speak to Callum Fraser, the distillery manager. He's got very little hair as it is left, but he pulls his hair out. Because what you've got to understand with 105, I don't know if people know this, it's at 60%. To get it to 60%, it's got to be mixed with other whiskey.
Mm.
So they don't dilute it with water to get it to 60%. In layman's terms, they'll take 100 casks at 63, 100 casks at 57, and basically tie them together to get that 60%. So it's the only whiskey we do that is actually watered down with other whiskey. There's nothing.
Given that you don't release it in batches, and it's literally that's absolutely insane, like scientific work to be able to do that.
And because of this as well, it's now our biggest selling whiskey worldwide.
Wow. Okay.
I don't have the up-to-date figures, but you go back to 2019, and I think it was in excess of something like 1.1 million bottles a year was sold globally of 105. And people over the years, we've done different age statements on it as well. What you're actually drinking just now, even though it doesn't say it in the label, well, wait a minute, wait to check mine. It did actually say it in the tube, and it did say it in the label for a while. But I believe this one is actually 9 years old. So this is why, it's not overly aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know yourself, guys, when you taste a lot of these younger cask strengths, 60, 63, 64, and they're maybe about 4 or 5 years old.
I mean, even on the nose, it's not that it's not smelling, it's not nosing like a 60%.
I mean, the classic one is if you actually get that prickle right on your nose, and you don't get that with this at all.
Not at all.
It just doesn't happen.
No,
and some of the tasting notes are absolutely bang on. I'm not a great person for banging on about tasting notes. I love people just to taste the whiskey and enjoy it, because it depends what you've had for dinner. Have you brushed your teeth? Have you had medication? You've been kissing your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever. It's all these things. Or someone else's girlfriend. It's one of these things. But it is very much, and there are official tasting notes. But it is very much, for me, sherry first and foremost on the nose.
This isn't fully matured in sherry casks, is it? There is some bourbon in there, right?
No, not at all.
No, it's fully sherry.
This is 100% Oloroso sherry.
Oloroso sherry. So it's what we would call a sherry bomb here from the
this would be probably your classic sherry bomb.
It's always this, and the Abuna, the Abalawa, they're always compared as like the two first sherry bombs.
The worst thing Abuna did for us personally was put the price up to a ridiculous amount.
The best thing?
It was the worst thing.
The worst thing, okay.
Because all of a sudden we had to hike up production 5 times. That sounds crazy, but we're still about 50, anything between kind of 53 and 60 pounds for a bottle of 105. But Abuna's went up again. I understand they're small batch, but we can't do this because it's such a commercial brand for us now, and it would just be a nightmare. But we have actually released different age statements. We've sold a lot of these things through Master Malt. For the 40th anniversary in 2008, we released a 40-year-old 105. Wow. 60%, fully 40 years.
My word, I would.
It was nice. Honestly, it was one of my top 3 whiskies of all time.
That's incredible. I'm going to read a few more of your tasting notes, and we'll get into it. Green tea is green. I get a touch of cigar too. Cooper, yes, got some tobacco too. Steve Coleman Williams. Jim Brannigan. Anyone get some almonds? It's not quite right, but nearest I can describe. Ian Jambaring, definitely get a bit of almond on the nose. Mike Pizarro, drinking better. Yes, couldn't afford to drink out like this. Absolutely. It's like when you go to the whiskey bars now and you're like, who are you going for whiskey? I think, oh, I've got better stuff at home. I'm going to stay at home, to be honest
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Jeffster, sorry, I'm late. Waiting for the sleeper up to Inverness. Have my drams with me though. Steve Conwell Williams, citrus oil, slightly underripe, freshly picked blackberries, and the oak on the nose. Anthony Mullins, I was just thinking marzipan, real boinga. The citrus remains on the taste, but spice, and yes, a bit of leather. DS007, sherry bomb explosion in the mouth of rich spices. Jeffster, I love the 105. It's my desert island choice. We'll be visiting the distillery in early May. Malcolm Tucker, palate, more sherry, dry fruit, bitter, orange, oak, cloves, and toffee. Clive Hampton, I visited Glenfarclas about 30 years ago, and the 105 blew me away. It remains a favourite ever since, and it is a beautiful, high-quality whiskey. Green tea is green. I don't get the smoke, but the cigar tone is unlit, unburnt cigar. Is there a whisper of smoke at the end of this?
I don't get any smoke of this at all. I mean, there really shouldn't. There shouldn't be a reason for any smoke.
Yeah, it's
you know, for me, more and more because of the age. Actually, it's really quite complex because you're talking 9 years old. So you're taking that alcohol and it's actually reached a peak and it's actually almost kind of smoothed right out. I mean, I'm just looking at my own tasting note. I find oak, apple, pears on the nose. Toffee is always the big, vanilla fudge, this sweetness. We've got a thing in Scotland. It's called tablet. I don't know if you've come across it before. It's like fudge.
Okay.
But it's made with condensed milk.
Oh, sounds
and
amazing.
You boil it up, you put it in a tray, and you let it go hard.
Okay.
So very, very sweet, but you got all these kind of vanilla notes coming through. So it is that kind of on the nose. But for me, this is quite a dry whiskey for a Glenfarclas. And I think that is because of the oak that's coming through. It's still young at 9 years old. And the oak is almost, marrying in with the cherry coming through. So, and again, if you see the colour on it, and I think we maybe almost touched on that, it is natural colour. There's nothing added to it at all.
Yeah, and that's the cherry in those 9 years has been able to really influence.
I mean, that's, to give you an idea, that's one at
25
years old.
Yeah.
That we launched last year, and it's not great, the light in here. I do apologise.
How dare you? Come on, Paul. You should have set up your studio in there, Peter.
This is I mean, unfortunately, folks, I work from home. I'm not actually up at the distillery, and we're going through major building work at the moment. So my office is up a floor again. So the house over 3 floors. There's building work anywhere. So excuse the Marvel background and stuff. I've had to get into my 3-year-old son's bedroom for this. So
another question from me is, what would you say about water on this one? Because obviously at 60%. I tend to always like to try my whiskey neat first before adding water. I mean, this one, clearly water at some point is going to open this up to some new flavours.
Totally agree with you. It's one of those things that I always approach whiskey. I won't approach any drink, as if I'm approaching food, where I'll try it first, then I'll add, if does it need seasoning? Does it need salt? Does it need pepper? Does it need something else? And whiskey for me is exactly the same thing. I think there's too much snobbery that's creeped into whiskey as well. Personally, all this, don't do this, don't do that. I've been in the industry 25 years, and it's something that's always really annoyed me. If you've bought the bottle, do with as you wish. As long as you've paid for it, I don't really care. It's one of those ones. But at the same time, I say to people, well, there's a 25-year-old limited edition decanter, for instance. It's £400 a bottle. There's only 600 of them. If you want to put Coca-Cola, Syrup FX, Iron Brew, do whatever you like. But my point would be, go and buy a bottle of blend at 20 quid. You're going to get a very similar experience. Chuck loads of ice in it.
This is what I love about cask strength whiskey, is it gives you the option to dilute it and do as you wish. When you add water to it, you can add as much water you want to get the best out of it for your personal experience and get the ABV that you want it and where you think it's its best. I love really high strength ABVs. I love cask strength whiskey. Even to this one, I add maybe a teaspoon or so of
Yeah.
water, which adds up enough. But I don't dilute it that much more than that. But everyone is going to be absolutely different. And everyone always asks this question on Pour and Sip, but it's particularly pertinent on a dram like the 105 that is at 60%.
I mean, for me, because I've been drinking whiskey a long time, but the 105, because of the age statement on it, I've tasted this when it's been at 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I would put double the amount of water in it.
At 4, yeah.
At 4, at 9 years old, at 10 years old, I've had, so we've done, as I mentioned, the 40-year-old, that was the anniversary bottling. We've done a 22-year-old version of this. We've done a 20-year-old version of this. We did a wonderful tasting, and it's quite appropriate because I think it's starting today, is the whiskey show in Las Vegas. And we did a 105 tasting 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we did 100 years of 105. So we did a 10-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, and a 40-year-old all lined up. And we thought, fabulous. We'll release a 30-year-old 105 as a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
And the big issue is everything's getting too hot up at this, worldwide, globally. So the ABV is starting to drop and drop quicker. So we couldn't actually produce a 30-year-old. It'd have been wonderful, about me. Absolutely gutted. And
it really would have been.
We were stupid enough to drink the whole sample at the time.
She made your own good. I'm just going to read a few more comments out. Please also, if you do have any last remaining questions, please ask them now, because I know you have to go in a minute. And we do have another dram to try, everybody. So please, if you do have any questions about Glenfarclas, please, or this particular dram, please ask them now. This is your final call. Just going to read out a few more tasting notes. Chris Dagnan, treacly black raisins, bit of just a burnt edge in Jambo Rain. For a 60% dram, this is extremely easy drinking. Delicious. Love the long finish. You guys have been with us for a long time, and we've had loads of cask strength whiskies added. And at the start, people were like, oh, I'm not used to drinking whiskey over 42, 40%. Yep. And then the more you train your palate to drink at higher strength, the more it becomes like, not like water, but it's just that edge is completely taken off. Reverend Kevin Wright, I'm not getting smoke in this, but I've got a mature woody palate with a bittersweet treacle depth. Real boing. After first few sips, a hint of caramel appears. Jake Yoichi in Japan is direct fire. Not sure about others in Scotland. There you have it. P. Burrett, 105 definitely needs a little bit of water to open it up beautifully. Mike Pizarro, 1 drop of water and then we get sherry, raisins and fruits all come out. Green tea is green. The nose does not really change over much with time, unlike some others we had. On the palate, though, the taste lengthens with more exposure. Vanilla in there, which I didn't get on the nose. Ian Jambo Rain, my glass is empty. We are going to get to the next dram very shortly. Your Uncle Banya, direct fire, doesn't Springbank still use direct fire? Remember someone mentioned it last year, but don't quote me. I don't think so, but I mean, don't quote me on it, and I definitely don't think it's exclusive use, but don't quote me on it. Yozza Hughes, Glenfarclas 25 is proper nice. Clive Hampton, I finished my glass, but I have a bottle of 105 in the cupboard, so I'm refilling. Superb. Real Boinga, finished with toffee, leather spice. There's definitely a leather note that I get, particularly on the palate.
This has been described as sitting in a leather armchair in the middle of winter in Scotland with a roaring fire on, the smoke's coming out the fire, with an old cigar box beside you, while you're peeling a Terry's chocolate orange. So these are all the classic flavors are kind of cigar box, the roaring fire, the chocolate element that comes through as well, the orange, that goes back to like almost the Seville oranges where the cask come from. So there's a big element of that as well. So 100%, the guys are nailing it all the way along the line as far as these.
They always do here at Pause Sip, though. Don't bring. You're giving me these wonderful images of me sitting in wintertime with the fire. It's just got hot here in London. I'm like, that does sound lovely, sitting by the fire, winter.
If you invite me back again, make it in the winter, and I'll make sure I'm sitting at a roaring fire somewhere.
Reed is saying apparently the Glengarrick use still direct fire stills. A real boingo. Well, I've enjoyed that very much. Thank you. Green tea is green. This is a nice wee dram. Pesho butter tablet. I'm assuming that's the
tablet. Yeah.
Anthony Mullins, my other half loves butter tablets. Green tea is green. I'm getting butter toffee now. Spices on the finish. Unlike the nose on the palate, it does change the longer it's in the air. Absolutely, oxygen does affect it the longer it sits. Simon Smith 3101. I'm not too good with describing it, but I'm buying a bottle, and that's exactly what you're saying. If you like it, buy a bottle of it and drink it and enjoy it to your heart's content. You don't need one tasting now.
I mean, it's just one of the things, just for me to say. So we've talked about 105, the mixability of it. To give you an idea, guys, I'm actually sitting with a cocktail that I've just made up on 105. It's fabulous. It's 60%. We've actually just created a cocktail competition for bars and restaurants throughout the whole of the UK. And the whole idea with this, you can't really damage this whiskey in any way. So if it starts at 60%, you're adding ice, you're adding a mixer, you're adding some fruit. We've actually tested this. It doesn't really go below 40. So you've actually still got a whiskey cocktail. But if you're starting with 40% and adding everything into it, are you actually drinking a whiskey cocktail, or are you actually drinking a liqueur? This is the other thing. But for me, classic old style, ginger ale, because of the ginger element, you get the spice element coming through with Glenfarclas, orange with a Seville orange flavour, and a double measure of 105. It's fabulous through the summer. Absolutely fabulous.
Now you made it a summer drink as well. There we go. There you have it.
Get summer drink as well. Watch this space for next year for cocktails, for cocktail kits and things. We're looking at this as well.
Mike Pizzara saying, what is it? So it was ginger ale.
I've got ginger ale, a slice of tangerine, actually. It's tangerine. And it's a double measure of 105 and just lots of ice. But my other favourite as well is just a whiskey and soda that works so well with this. And again, just a twist of orange and a dash of, if you've got orange bitters, it just elevates it even more. But we have a full list of cocktails, and we can share it with the guys. We can pass it on to you if they want. We've got various different things made up.
You guys would all vote for that. Hopefully, if you let us know at the end, and we can share that with everybody on our Pour and Sip Digest or on social media or something, that would be absolutely brilliant. Your Uncle Banyan saying, please invite Peter back in the winter. Pesho saying a vertical would be fun. And Mike Pizzaro is saying he's happy to do a Marvel and whiskey night. No need to apologize.
Yeah, this is it. I'll get dressed up the next time.
So I'm very aware that we do have another dram to try. So Peter, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you about Glenfarclas and all.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for coming along, supporting the brand, supporting Master and Malt, and hopefully see you again. Slange.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Right. So that was amazing. I absolutely love that dram. It's always been one of my favorites. So it's really nice to try that again. Now, we were meant to have TJ with us from Talisker, but he's not here. So you've got me as well. I mean, all the disappointment from tonight. You thought you had Christy, you thought you had TJ, but you're still just stuck with me. Don't worry. I'm going to take you through the Talisker. Malcolm Tucker saying, why only bars and restaurant? I'm sure Pour and Sippers can come with a few. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you can. So I'm just going to do a brief kind of discussion about Talisker. And I'm going to pour the dram for myself. This is the Talisker Port. I think it's pronounced Portrait, but spelled Ruighe. I'm not 100% sure on that. TJ would have been able to tell us that. So, as Talisker is an island distillery, and it's on the Isle of Skye. It's operated by Diageo, and the Talisker 10 years has been awarded as part of the classic malts range. So that's where Talisker really became famous, was being part of that Diageo kind of the classic malts range. Now, they usually mature in American oak casks, and it's kind of peated. So this one, if you are into peated whiskey, you're probably going to like this one. If you're not, let's hope you will like it. But it's usually, let's say, 18 to 22 parts per million. So it's definitely not necessarily at the Ardbeg Lefroy level of peating. So it's kind of a medium level peating. And the thing to note about Talisker, and particularly for me, is the character of Talisker. So being surrounded by that kind of rugged coastline on the Isle of Skye, it's got this real kind of maritime salinity to it. That is kind of distinctly Talisker. You almost takes you to that place at the Isle of Skye. Apparently, it is pronounced Portrait, the largest town on the Isle of Skye. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So that's really what I get from Talisker, is those wonderful kinds of salty salinity, maritime notes mixed in with that wonderful peat. There's also this chili note in Talisker, which I always get. It's like cracked black pepper, but this kind of spiciness that is absolutely wonderful. And that's particularly down to these very unique wash stills that they have at Talisker that create that famous character. And it's kind of a pepper chili kick. So, I mean, one of my favorite things about it is that thing. It's the location, the fact that when you try Talisker, you can try that kind of, it takes you to that place, the rugged coastal heritage, and it's this wild spirit by the sea. One of my favorite things. It differs very much from the Isle of whiskies and the Isle of peat. It's not exactly the same. So we'll try this more herbaceous, the Talisker and the Isle of Skye type of peat. So I think we should try this one together and let me know all of your taste notes on this one. I think we've had Talisker on here before, so hopefully you guys are familiar with those distillery characters. If you're not, please let me know what you're thinking of this particular dram. So this has been finished in port cask, but being matured firstly, I think it's an ex-bourbon cask, some refill European oak, and then some heavily charred casks before being finished in port casks from Portugal. I love port, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that port has influenced the Talisker character. I mean, when we're talking about Glenfarclas, again, it's always sherry, not much in terms of finishing, but Talisker have played around with some finishes, this being a very popular one. So it's going to be interesting to see what you guys think about it. So please get your tasting notes in. I'm going to go, wow, Andy, correct, after the town of Portree. There you go. I smashed it. Mike Pizarro, man, now I need at least one more dram so I can try the cocktail. Well, this is the dram. Jeffster, well, I'm going to be on Skye on Saturday, hoping to get a visit in. That sounds amazing, Jeffster. Your Uncle Vanya, Portree, yes. I mean, sometimes with Scotch, it's like Lechig. I mean, I never would have pronounced that as Lechig. I don't. It's Lechig, Ledaig, Gaelic. Very strange thing. Steve Coleman Williams. Well, this has a lot to live up to. Definitely described Talisker as one of my favourites for years. Jeff Whiskey. I think the Port Tree is my favourite Talisker. Love the 10, but this is something else. Yeah, I think the 10's like a kind of absolute classic, kind of staple bar drink. It's like the 10 is so, you know, you can get it in supermarkets. It's one of those drinks that you should have. It's like an absolute staple of any person's bar. But this one obviously is going to be super different. I actually haven't tried this one yet, so I'm really looking forward to it. Alistair Taft. This one was sink cleaner for me. I love that tasting note. That's amazing. Jester, fully booked on Saturday. I was hoping to appeal to TJ. Yes, about the Talisker. I'm assuming you want him to go and visit. Chris Turner, this is much nicer than the Talisker 10. Okay, so that's interesting that that's the second comment which has said that. Joe, the Talisker has a peaty edge to it, but it smells really dry and spicy like peppercorns. Green tea is green. Definitely something chemical about the nose on Talisker. Yeah, absolutely. Pesho, the smoke develops on the palate. Mike Pizarro, I love the Storm and the great Game of Thrones ones that they released. Probably the only Game of Thrones whiskey I really rated. I didn't get into those because I felt like if I was going to start buying Game of Thrones ones, I'd have to collect all of them, and it was going to affect my wallet too much. Even though I'm a huge fan of the show, I didn't try any of the Game of Thrones whiskies. I still haven't, but I would love to. Simon, caramel nose. Looking forward to this. Reverend Kevin Wright, immediate cozy smoke. Cozy smoke, not at all acrid. Sweet peat, salty nose. Real Boinga, smoky, peaty spice on the nose. TACD, there really is a salty sea breeze on the nose. Wow. It's that wonderful thing of, like, you know, that fresh sea air and the wind's kind of blowing past you, and you can really smell that as soon as you dip your nose into this glass. Jeff Whiskey saying getting a slight Marmite taste, slightly yeasty and salty. Interesting. I've got so much to read out. I barely got a chance to try it. I don't want to try it like in front of you guys and then make the noise. It's going to be some kind of like ASMR kinds of stuff. Yoza Hughes, the Talisker tastes so good. Hint of smoke on the nose and taste with that slight chili pepper finish. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That chili pepper finish is the kind of classic Talisker notes. Real Boinga and salt. Ian Jambo Rain, I don't get the port fruit on the nose at all. Smoke, seaweed, iodine, and spice. Yes. Interesting. I don't actually know off the top of my head, and having not researched, is that I don't know how long this has been finished in port cask. And not having tried it, I'm not 100% sure yet what the absolute influence of those port casks were. So before I read out more comments, I'm just going to have a little sip with you guys. Cheers, everybody. So first reaction is that I agree. There's like this kind of lingering kind of note on the back palate where there's this kind of red fruit kind of note that I assume might be from the port. It's definitely not I can't imagine this finished for a very long time in port. The peat is really so well balanced, and it's got that classic Talisker style. It's still that chili is right on the edge of my tongue. Absolutely love that, and that kind of smokiness on the nose that goes into the palate. There's these wonderful kinds of salinity in there. That chemical kind of note, which I really enjoy, which is a bit Isla-esque, but there's something a bit kind of herbier about this one, a bit greener about this one. Mike Pizarro, smoke and pepper on the nose. Steve Coleman Williams, barbecue sticky ribs, absolutely 100%. Sea kale reminds me of sitting on a stormy island pub by the fire, waiting for smaller seas to sail. Steve, where have you been? I would love to have been to this place, but I definitely get the barbecue sticky ribs, 100%. Ian Jambo Rain, for anyone with a medical background, this has definite betadine notes on the nose. I don't have a medical background, so I can't help you on that one. Steve Hickson, not my cup of tea or whiskey. Steve, that's absolutely fine. If you're new here, or if anyone who's been a pour and sip regular, the great thing about trying 5 drams in a box is you've got the chance to kind of go, I like that one, or I might not like that one. You're basically opening yourself up to discovery. And that's the best thing about this. So if you don't like one of the whiskies, you know that it's just not your style of whiskey. Maybe it's a peat thing. We have changed a lot of opinions on this show, on these tastings. With peat, a load of you have just didn't like peat back in the day, and now you've started to really enjoy it. So that's all we can do. But it's like, it's a journey of discovery, and you're not going to like everything. So Joe F, past the light peat and pepper, it smells quite floral with a mix of sweet sauce almost. Yeah, I get that. It's like, for me, it's that sweet barbecue sauce with that hint of meatiness as well, that savory edge. Your Uncle Vanya, definitely. They've started doing hand fills in the shop too, by the way. If you'd like to sign your own label, Enjoy Skye. I'd love to sign my own label. Mike Pizarro had a tasting set with all the Game of Thrones whiskies. Was one of the reasons I enjoyed pour and sip, as I enjoyed the experience and variety. That's awesome, Mike. Great story. That's maybe a story for everybody to say the reason they joined Pour and Sip, where their whiskey journey started and how they ended up at Pour and Sip. That's really, really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Chris Dagnan, the port takes the sharp peeps off of it. Nice and smooth as a result. Chris Dagnan, peeps equals pepper. Good. I was starting to wonder there. Real Boinger, taste salty, smoky mushrooms with seaweed. Loving your tasting notes tonight. Joe F, getting the port finish on the palate as an initial taste before the peat comes forward, followed by melted chocolate and caramel. Pesho, the salinity is moorish. Absolutely. Mike Pizarro, red currants and chili and salt. This is growing in me fast. On me. Shampoo Rain. Betadine is what they use to sterilize a surgical field. Lots of iodine in it. That's great. So yeah, I mean, that's got that kind of Isla peat element to it, that iodine note that you get from an Ardbeg or a Lafroig. It's definitely here, 100%. TACD, oh, the peat really takes a back seat in the palate. Interesting. I like this more than the other Talisker I tried. I don't remember which one it was now, though. A lot of people have so far said that they prefer this to the Talisker 10. Which is interesting. Clive Hampton, I'm not getting any real West Coast character from this, but a mixture of sweet, salty notes, but another rich whiskey. Peter Gilmore, not bad with a drop of water. Well, this one's bottled at 45.8% ABV. So, I mean, depending on how much water you added to the Glenfarclas 105, it depends how much more water you want to add to this one. I'm going to go for one more sip, and please get in any more of your last-minute tasting notes for me. The port is really there in those kind of like red currants, as someone explained, plums maybe. It's right on the back palate for me. The peat is, again, I think it's more potent on the nose than it is on the palate. On the palate, it goes from the nose, it goes from this kind of chemical kinds of peat, like someone was saying with that salinity. And on the palate, it becomes meatier, like barbecue sauce, sticky sauce, ribs dipped in barbecue sauce, that kind of peat. And it's absolutely wonderful. It's much sweeter on the palate than the nose suggests, which for me is coming from the port. Peter Gilmore, not bad with a drop of water. Joe F, I definitely prefer this to Talisker 10. Simon, much sweeter after the second or third taste. I agree. Steve Coleman Williams, oh dear, Might need a bottle of this. Really light on the tongue, really thick and comfortable. One I could drink too much of easily. That's the problem. But remember to pour and sip sensibly. P. Burrett, a really delightfully lightly peated dram. Silky smooth and easy to drink. Yeah, this isn't a peat monster by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a blow your heads off kind of Ardbeg. Ruighe. It's kind of, it is lightly peated. Instead of saying like kind of before 22 ppm is kind of roughly where Talisker peat. And remember, that doesn't mean the final product is 22 ppm. This is what they peat their barley to. So it comes out in different ways, but it's a good method to work out where distilleries are wanting, how much they're wanting their peat to be potent within the dram. TACD partner got me a pour and sips subscription for my birthday. After I started getting very interested in whiskey. That's awesome. Michael Tucker, palate, red fruit quickly overtaken by chili peppers that sting the lips. Yeah, for me, it was on the tip of the tongue, that kind of chili chocolate note. But it's wonderful. And cracked black pepper as well, that gives that kind of tingle. DS007, smoky and savoury on the palate, long finish. Anthony Mullins, with a drop of water, I'm getting more dark chocolate. Your Uncle Vanya, guys, food pairing chat for the night. It's late, let's go. Yeah, we haven't had one yet. Maybe that's kind of Christie's influence, is the food pairing chat. I've already had my dinner, so I'm all good to go. Mike Pizarro, I would rate this between 10 and the Storm. Very enjoyable. Honestly, not the best whiskey we've had at Pour and Sip, but we have had some real crackers. Yeah, Mike, I've got to be honest. I mean, saying the best whiskey that we've had on Pour and Sip, I mean, there have been so many. It's impossible to say. It's quite a high bar. It's a hugely high bar. Steve Coleman Williams, that's how I started here too, and it's kind of just stayed. You must love us, Steve. Thank you so much. Real Boinga, I would say the finish is seaside, iodine, salt, spice. I really like it. Pesha, I love the salt in this whiskey. It's so unusual. Chris Dagnan goes nice with 85% dark chocolate. Amazing. I would absolutely love some kind of dark chocolate with this really high cacao percentage. Yoza Hughes, to say how I got into whiskey, I'd need to write a biography. Lol. Go on. Maybe it might sell loads. You don't know. Mike Pizarro, whoever said that a drop brings out chocolate is spot on. Much improved. Would go well with digestives. Right. So I'm very conscious of the time. And thank you so much for joining us in April. And I'm sorry that Christy couldn't be here tonight. We wish that she's having a great time. I'd still want to ask you guys the final question. So tonight we tried the Glenfarclas 105 and the Talisker Port Tree. There we go. But what's been your favourite from this month's box? We've had some amazing whiskies in this month's box. So please let me know in the comments your favourite from this month. I think the bar this month has been super high, if I'm going to be honest. I've absolutely loved near on every one that we've tried. I will tell you my favourite from this month. I'm just pondering over that. So you guys let me know yours, and then right at the end, I will let you know mine. But I'm pondering it because there have been some really, really good ones, and it was 2 weeks ago, so I'm trying to remember which one I really, really enjoyed. I'd know which it is tonight for sure. That's, for me, I loved both drams, but it's not hard. I'm a huge fan of one of them. So please let me know which one has been your favourite of the month. Steve Coleman Williams, you're right. Talisker would go really well with chili-infused Wensleydale. Interesting. We really are hitting the food pairing notes on this one. Chili-infused Wensleydale. I've never tried such a thing. Sounds amazing. Anthony Mullins, after the last time, I saved myself a whisper bar from my Easter egg. Amazing. I've been off chocolate. I've been trying to be a good boy. So no Easter eggs for me. Mike Pizarro, Yoza, now I'm curious. TSD, yeah, same. I've been quite choosy with the bottles I buy from the store, but I've still ended up with half a dozen of bottles of really amazing whiskey I never would have found. Absolutely. So Yoza Hughes, Talisker for him. Good choice. Pesho, the milk and honey, or Talisker, but they were all amazing. Chris Dagnan, Pikes Creek. Green tea is green. Preempting your inevitable question. One day I'm going to surprise you. It's going to be different. Glenfarclas tonight, but Tirranpelli overall with M&H Apex close second. Malcolm Tucker 105. Your Uncle Vanya. Thank you, Andy. You have done well. Thank you. Yeah, it feels very strange. I'm not going to be honest without Christy. It really does. It's like it's just my, something to bounce off of. It feels very strange being by myself. I hope you guys have still enjoyed it. Anthony Mullings, amazing whiskies, but the Pike Creek still gets it for me. Simon, milk and honey from the box. Talisker tonight. Paul Bailey, milk and honey by a mile. Okay, interesting. Lots and lots of love for the Israeli whiskey that we tried at the start of the month, the M&H, the Apex, which was our Pour and Sip exclusive. So that's really interesting. Loads more coming in here. Your Uncle Banya, Tirunpelli, definitely. Barry Cullen, Glenfarclas 105 for me, a real surprise. Andy Irwin, Tirunpelli for me. Reed, Tirunpelli by a point over the 105. Reverend Kevin Wright, I did enjoy the pomegranate finish Israeli one, but this Talisker is certainly grand. Choices to make. TACD, Pike Creek favourite this month. Either this Talisker or the Tirunpelli a close second. C. Conwell Williams, Talisker for the month and week for me. More coming in. Clive Hampton, 105 and Pike Creek. Joe F, this is a really tough call this month. It has to be the Milk and Honey Apex. That's interesting. Loads and loads of love for that M&H Pour and Sip exclusive. So that's really great for us. Cooper, oh man, tricky for the box. I'd probably say the Tirunpelli edges it for me this month, but enjoyed both of these tonight. Mike Pizarro, haven't done the rest of the box yet. This week it's Talisker. Jeffster, green tea is green. Tirunpelli did it for me this month, even if the bottle was smaller. Yes. Malcolm Tucker, Portree goes well with haggis, has had a bottle in. Wow, that sounds like a great pairing. Alistair Taff, I voted Tirunpelli last week, but now, having had the Pike Creek on its way now, that wins hands down with M&H third. Pesho, it's been great fun, Andy. Thank you so much, Pesho, for joining. TACD, yeah, good job with the solo hosting. Thank you, guys. I'm feeling the love. Chris Randall, Tirunpelli is a great dram, but I do like the peat and Talisker. Real Boinga, thank you very much. It's hard to say which was the favourite. The Milk and Honey was very interesting. Pike Creek was super smooth. Portree was very good, and Glenfarclas too. I've got to be honest, personally, I loved everything that I tried, and I always do, to be honest with you, because it's very rare that I try a whiskey and I go, I didn't like that. It pretty much never happens. If I'm honest, I think for me, and I know you guys are waiting with bated breath for my big reveal of which my favourite of the month has been. And for me, number one would be the 105. I love that dram. I love a huge sherry bomb. That is it. It's one of the ones I'd recommend instantly to anybody. So that was my favourite. I think Pike Creek after that took me by surprise. I absolutely loved that. And I will get myself a bottle of that, 100%. So that one really took me by surprise. And then my third would have been the pomegranate Apex, because it was Pour and Sip exclusive. So I have to say that. Miguel Baghammer, Glenfarclas for me, ordering a bottle now. Great choice. Chris Dagenham, well done, Andy. Real Bonga, Andy, you handled your solo show very well. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate this. It's it's weird being solo. Paul, I'm guessing your name is Paul Barrett. It's P Barrett. It could be Peter. It could be anything. Phil. Yeah, could be any of those. For the month, it has to be the M&H Apex. For this evening, it has to be Portree, as I'm a bit of a smoke monster. Great choices. Joe F, thanks for taking the reins alone tonight, Angie. It was enjoyable to be tasting at the same time as the host. Yeah, absolutely. It was weird because I felt like at some point I was going to have to take a sip of it. But I felt like if I stopped talking, all you guys are just going to be listening to me drinking whiskey. And it would be a bit ASMR. It's just like, wait to do this. Yeah. Jay, green tea is green. This selection this month has been really great. I just finished the previous M&H last week, and they are a whiskey maker to covet. Mike Pizarro, Andy did a super job. Though Christy is definitely missed. She is, 100%. Simon 301, good job tonight. Yossius, thank you for tonight, Andy. Reverend Kevin Wright, well done, Andy. Great company as always. Thanks all. So I think on that note, everybody, I'm going to say slanger to you all. Have an amazing Thursday night and weekend. And I will see you all on the next tasting, which I'm just going to double check my calendar. Make sure I'm going to be available, which will be on the 5th of May, which is a Thursday night as usual. And hopefully I will see you all there.